What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central Podcast, episode 77, where we are going to be recapping the series that just occurred between the Mets and the Giants as the Mets sweep back-to-back series, winning 7 straight games as they beat the Reds as well in that final game. And we're going to be talking about the trade deadline, which is coming up. We're already hearing reports, Mark Vientos potentially on the move, amongst other ideas being thrown out there. And then, of course, the series coming up against the San Diego Padres as this is it. This is the last series until the trade deadline. So this could be the last series here for a lot of guys on this baseball team, which is going to be interesting to see. Uh, but before we jump into everything, I ask that you please leave a like on your way into the live show, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans, and turn on your post notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on the channel. And if you are in the live chat, we will get to your comments throughout the episode. We're not ignoring you, but we will get to them as we go along, just because this is going to be a little bit more of a laid back type of episode. Just because, I mean, the Mets took care of business against a team that you probably should be beating if you really are a legit contender. I didn't expect a sweep. I'm not complaining with a sweep by any means. I thought 2 out of 3 was a safe pick there. And like I said, they end up surprising us and sweeping now back-to-back series. But Matt, I'll let you jump in with just your thoughts on the week here that just occurred, what's coming up. But it's definitely starting to get to the crunch time now of the MLB season, and it's awesome.
They took care of business, and listen, to be honest, like, was the baseball still 100% pretty to the point like where we exactly want it to be? No, not exactly, but I think this was one of the better series played by the Mets in a while. And the reason why I say that is because you saw different aspects of why this team is good, like in multiple different areas. Like, they didn't win each game the same type of way, which is something that I like. Now, listen, like I said, I ideally want everything to click at the same time, so this team can be like that one dominant force that just roll through teams. But I did like how, like I said, the different ways in which the Mets won all these 3 games. You look at the first game, right? This Mets offense, dating back a couple years now, has had like zero to little success against Logan Webb. What did they do? They capitalized on him. He had a poor game. He had a poor outing. Boom, boom, boom. Had him against the ropes, and they destroyed him. They teed off him. They scored many runs. And it was another good reason because, one, you didn't have to use a lot of your top arms in that bullpen. The only top guy that pitched in that game was Huascar Brosman. So it was very nice to save the bullpen in that sense. When you go to the second game, okay, sure, the offense actually wasn't pretty, but you look at a guy like Mark Vientos, a guy who has struggled, many times over this past season. Obviously, there was rumors about that the Mets are looking to trade him at the trade deadline, but he comes up in a big spot, delivers 2-run RBI down the left field line, and then again, the bullpen comes in a little bit shaky from Diaz's end, but was able to get it done. And then the third game, you look at the game yesterday and you break it down. Pretty much when you look at the top of the order did not contribute much, other than Francisco Lindor with a little bloop, with a little bloop fielder's choice hit in the early innings to put him up 1-0, and then you look at Juan Soto's home run later in the game. The big reason why the Mets were even in that game in the first place was because the bottom of the order stepped up, and that's a big discussion point that we've talked about many times in this podcast about how the bottom of the order isn't the strongest, and the Mets need to make serious improvements in that play specifically. Well, Ronnie Mauricio stepped up last night. He had the game of his life. Francisco Alvarez, ever since coming back from the minor leagues, he's looked like a completely different player. Marte's been playing well. McNeil's been playing well. And then, the bullpen also, Diaz, again, made it a little bit uncomfortable right at the end there, but he was able to get through it. And just, another well-played series. And look, anytime you go to the West Coast, unless you're playing like a really bad team, like the Oakland A's of the past couple of years, usually those West Coast trips are tough. But to start out with 3-0 with a sweep, and now going into San Diego, in which you're probably really hoping to just take that series, go 2-1, and then you go into the trade deadline on a 5-1 road trip. I think that would be huge for this team. And then obviously we'll see what happens on Thursday with the trade deadline.
Yeah, definitely just very weird the way that they won all these games, like you said, in a different way, because you had the offense in one of the games, you had the defense in the other game, and then you kind of had in that last game just kind of a mixed bag of everything. But it was just nice to see this team, like I said, actually take care of business and now create some separation because of their winning and the Yankees actually helping out the Mets for a change, which didn't happen enough this weekend. The Mets end up getting a little bit of separation between them and the Phillies. Hopefully, there's no looking back on that now. As you know, like I said, they're finding ways to win games before the trade deadline. Once you bring in these guys, you got to hope, okay, now they're really going to start to take off. We'll see what the Phillies do, of course, to counter that. But yeah, I like the biggest positive to me was still game one, where, like you said, you saw them actually do something that we've complained about all year long, where it's they get these starters on the ropes and they just never knock them out of the games. And they finally did in that spot. And I would just like to see it built on because, if I'm going to have a gripe with anything over these past few games, and I'll let you jump in with what your thoughts on it because I brought up in the post game yesterday. My biggest problem right now is that you're getting the individual production from these guys, which is great. Like Nimmo's giving you multi-hit games. Lindor's been a lot better lately. Soto's still hitting at a good level, and now you're getting Alvarez locked in. You're getting Beatty, who is coming through with some hits. My problem right now is that you are still not getting it with runners in scoring position. And I hate to bring it up again every single episode, but it just has to be said because it's like if this one kink was ironed out a little bit, we would be able to be so cocky and arrogant about this baseball team. And it's just that one thing where just you want to see them get into that next gear, which we've been waiting all season long, and it's about to be August, and they just can't. But I mean, your thoughts on that? Because it's just frustrating that you're starting to see these guys locked in, especially Alvarez now, but he comes up with runners in scoring position, and it's like he forgets how to hit.
I mean, it's been the problem the whole year, right? So it's like it gets it gets kind of old about complaining about it. I mean, it needs to be complained about because this is one of the things that hurt this team last year in the postseason, along with having basically no bullpen whatsoever. I mean, like we stated before, like the circle of trust last year in the bullpen was Edwin Diaz, Ryan Stack, and half of Reed Garrett. So that certainly didn't help, but again, it's weird because again, when you look at the game last night, right? They go 2 for 13 with runners in scoring position, and most likely, at least most of the time, when you play a game like again like that, and you go 2 for 13 with runners in scoring position, for the most part, you probably end up losing that game. But they just it's weird because they just keep finding ways to win games. And listen, the Giants are not a bad team specifically. Listen, they're not the greatest team either, but they do have a pretty good bullpen and they do have a pretty good pitching staff. I believe going into this series, or at least for most of the year, they've had the top bullpen ERA in baseball. So the fact that the Mets offense is still able to get to them, and I mean, they hit Randy Rodriguez yesterday for 2 home runs when going up to that point, Rodriguez has only given up 1 home run this entire season, and then to do two in one inning off, with Mauricio and Soto respectively, it's like they just keep finding ways. But definitely, if this team does want to go far and they want to be a true World Series threat and contender, that's something that's going to have to get cleaned up in the long run because and listen, I know that the Dodgers have kind of struggled these last couple weeks. Same with the Tigers and same with kind of a bunch of other teams behind the Mets. I know the Cubs have maybe kind of slowed down a little bit, but when you look at those when you look at those three offense specifically, when you look at their numbers with Rogers' score position, they hit, and they come through with those big time hits. So listen, hopefully with a couple moves to the deadline, that's something that gets fixed. But yeah, I mean, we just have to see. We just have to see.
Yeah, it just unfortunate that we have to talk about this every episode. The one thing that is though nice to talk about differently is, and we'll get into a deeper dive when we break down the games, but last night in the game you saw the luxury of having Gregory Soto in this bullpen because if they didn't have Gregory Soto in that bullpen last night, they probably lose the game because you're talking about having to, use Reed Garrett probably for a full inning. Brooks Raley then has to give you a full inning, and who knows how that would have went. Edwin Diaz, maybe you need to get more outs from him. So last night you at least saw the luxury of this bullpen having those additions or that addition there, and they're still going to make additions, which is what's nice. And it sucks that they didn't yet because Edwin Diaz not being used yesterday would have been ideal for, I don't know, a Fairbanks if that's who they end up acquiring, or a Helsley if that's who they acquire, whoever it may be. Obviously not Emmanuel Clase anymore, but
Mhm.
uh, yeah, it was really just nice to see the luxury of having another quality arm back there last night because it just adds so much depth to this bullpen.
Yeah, that's something that this team has they've really missed throughout this whole year because as I said, for the most part throughout the season, they've gone through a large part of it without a reliable lefty in there. I mean, they had Minter and Young to start the season. Those two obviously went out injured. And then, you had periods where you had to use only Luis Castillo, only Richard Lovelady, and those are not good options. Now I know they picked up Luis Castillo and he actually pitched a pretty
Jose.
good inning in that first game of this series, but that was there was no it was a low leverage situation. He got the 3 outs, cool, whatever. He's gone off the team again. But now with having Rayleigh and both Gregory Soto in this bullpen, it provides you a good little mix of lefties because and I believe Carson brought this up when we did the Gregory Soto live stream, which make sure you guys check out because that was a very good live stream that we did. But he talked about it that with Soto, with having Soto and Rayleigh in this bullpen, it's two little good options because they're very different of each other. If you need Gregory Soto to go out there and face the top of the lineup, where you need velo to get through that type of the order, boom, you could put in Gregory Soto, and as we saw in yesterday's game, when he had to go through guys like Devers and Ramos and Jung Ho Lee, he was able to get through that part of the order, without any trouble. And it's just nice to see. I mean, like his fastball last night I really liked, and then especially his slider I really liked. I mean, that back foot strikeout slider on Heliot Ramos, that was a very nice pitch by him. So, and then when Brooks Raley, when you need more of a control guy, more of that low velo arm, specifically to face the bottom of the order, you could put in Brooks Riley in that situation also. But you could also pretty much rely on Brooks Riley as well to get you big timeouts if it's needed as well. So yeah, it's nice to have two of those options in that bullpen. And the one thing I'll say about Gregory Soto is, listen, Jeremy Hefner was a cool guy getting up his number 65, but how could you give Gregory Soto Robert Gazelman's number? You're disrespecting a legend right there.
I don't know where to where to go from that one. Um, I mean, it was either that or he went to back to 30, which is what he wore in Philly, I believe. And you don't want to take a Whole Foods man's number now. So either way, it would have been disrespecting one of the legends. But all jokes aside on that, yeah, it's just really great to have, like I said, just a mix of all these different options. And then, like I said, they're going to acquire another name there at some point for this bullpen. And that's the exciting part about it because then you're talking about a guy like Ryan Stanek and Reed Garrett, which Reed Garrett as of lately has kind of been iffy. I mean, he's been fine, but whenever you ask him to work back to back days, like we saw yesterday, he's just not the same pitcher, unfortunately. And it's understandable. Ryan Stanek, you never know what you're getting from him at all. So once you get that Rico Garcia replacement, who knows? I've been saying for a bit now, maybe you do a reliever swap kind of thing, and Jose Budo's out the door. Like, I could see a world where the Rays are interested in Jose Budo to get Pete Fairbanks because Budo's got control. They can make him a starter. They could leave him as a reliever. He'll probably become one of the best relievers in baseball in Tampa Bay. But maybe there's a world where, that's an avenue they go down. Or maybe, Ryan Stanek gets moved to a different team to open up another spot where you could acquire Fairbanks and a Helsley, or Fairbanks and another like decent kind of right-handed arm. So there are a couple of different avenues that they could go down with the bullpen, which is very exciting. Maybe one of the starters moves to the pen. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen because they also have some starters coming back in McGill and Blackburn, which I wonder what's going to happen there. I think Blackburn's gone though by the trade deadline. I think these rehab starts are going to, just get him out the door. A team like the Angels, I'm sure, will be all over Paul Blackburn at the deadline, thinking that they're good enough to buy. But either way, let's recap the series as there is a good amount to get into here. So in game number 1, it was Clay Holmes versus Logan Webb, like we mentioned before. In the top of the first inning, Nimmo hits a double, Lindor hits a single, steals second, Soto hits a ground out, which brings in a run. Alonso hits a sac fly, which makes it 2-0. In the bottom of the first, Ramos hits a single, Devers hits a double, Adames grounds out, which brings in a run to make it 2-1. In the top of the third, Lindor hits a solo shot to make it a 3-1 game. So Lindor building on what we saw towards the end of that Angels series. In the top of the fourth, Beatty, Alvarez hit back-to-back singles. Mauricio walks. Taylor hits into a force out, which makes it 4-1. Steals second. Nimmo hits a single, which makes it a 6-1 ball game. In the top of the ninth, Acuna gets hit by a pitch. Lindor hits a double. A wild pitch brings in a run. Soto hits a single, and that makes it 8-1 by the end. And that is your final score of that ball game. As Jose Castillo, like Matt mentioned before, comes in and shuts things down there. In game number two, David Peterson versus Robbie Ray, a little more of a low event game. And this one came down to which team actually was playing well defensively, because you have Rafael Devers, who can't make a single play in the baseball diamond, versus Pete Alonso, looking like a gold glover in this game. But in the top of the fourth, Alonso hits a single, Marte hits a double, Beatty hits a single, and the Mets would fail to score with the bases loaded and nobody out, as Vientos strikes out and Alvarez hits into a double play. In the bottom of the fourth, Adames and Chapman hit singles. Schmidt walks. Lee hits into a force out. That brings in a run to make it 1-0. In the top of the sixth, Soto walks, steals second. Marte then would walk, and Vientos hits a double, which made it a 2-1 game. And in the bottom of the ninth, Diaz would give us a heart attack as Young-Hoo Lee hits a home run, or hits a ball that would have been a home run in every single other ballpark but the one they were playing in. And Pete Alonso makes a game-saving grab, which probably would have resulted the game go into extra innings, and the Mets hold on to win by a final score of 2-1. And in game number three, it was Kodai Senga versus Matt Gage, as the Giants did a opener for that game. In the top of the third, Alvarez and Mauricio hit singles. Lindor hits into a force out, which made it 1-0. In the top of the fourth, McNeil hits a double. Marte walks. Beatty hits into a double play. The bottom of the fourth inning, Chapman hits a solo shot, which ties the game up at 1. Top of the fifth, Alvarez and Mauricio hit back-to-back doubles. So instead of the singles they hit earlier, they get doubles there, and that made it 2-1 by the end of that. In the bottom of the fifth, Adames hits a single. Chapman hits his second home run of the game, which made it 3-2. In the top of the seventh, Mauricio, though, hits a solo shot, a splash shot there, pause, to tie the game up at 3. And then Soto goes the opposite way to make it 4-3 with a home run of his own. In the ninth inning, a little bit of insurance there as Mauricio and Nimmo hit doubles, which make it 5-3. And then Diaz gives us another heart attack, loads the bases, but works out of the jam. And the Mets hold on to win 5-3 and sweep the series. One thing that also we didn't really get into as a positive, and I'll let you give your thoughts on this, but I thought the Mets played so much better defensively than we've seen throughout the entirety of this season, whether it is Pete Alonso just making great plays or Brett Beatty scooping a ball at second base when Ronnie Mauricio, not making the best throws over there, just chucking it into the ground. But yeah, overall, your thoughts with the defense throughout the series, which I thought, again, this was one of their better defensive series that we've seen this season.
Yeah, I got to give major credit to the defense. And look, the defense, when you compare it from last year to this year, last year's defense was certainly much better. But in this series, especially multiple players on this team, they really flashed a lot there. I mean, the first and the obvious one is Pete Alonso. I think Pete Alonso had the best defensive game of his career in the second game of the series. Now, I don't know if we'll ever see him play a better defensive game at all, because he was out there scooping balls. He was making, I believe he made a nice little diving play before, but again, he made that just really great, game-ending catch to end that game in the second game. Another guy I got to give credit to defensively, and I know Beatty had a pretty good defensive game as well, but I got to give credit to this guy, because this guy has gotten a lot of shit from a ton of fan bases, specifically rival fan bases at all. We've heard Juan Soto can't play defense. You know what? I got to give major credit to Juan Soto here, because if you recall back to the second game when Jung-Ho Lee absolutely mashes an Edwin Diaz hanging slider into right field off that brick wall, and like we brought up, any other ballpark, that's a home run, except for this ballpark. And Juan Soto played that ball fantastically off the bricks to only hold Jung-Ho Lee to a double. Because if you recall to the series a couple weeks ago when the Phillies played the Giants and Patrick Bailey ended up hitting that walk-off, that inside the park walk-off home run, he pretty much hit that ball to the same exact spot, and Brandon Marsh played that ball absolutely wrong off the wall, and it was just rolling along in the outfield, and that allowed Patrick Bailey to score. Now, Jung-Ho Lee's a much faster player than Patrick Bailey is. So if that ball ends up freaking just rolling through the outfield, there's a very good chance that Jung Holy ends up hitting an inside the park home run, and that game's tied right there 2-2. So I got to give major props to Juan Soto on playing that ball correctly. Because listen, we've seen it. He gets a ton of shit. He gets a ton of shit for his defense. And listen, is Juan Soto a Gold Glove right fielder? No, but you have to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing in the moment too, where it's like that saved what would have been probably a triple there, maybe even an inside the park home run, which would have been so annoying after we laughed at the Phillies for getting walked off by that earlier in the year in the same stadium. So yeah, just a lot better defensively throughout this series, and the pitching is starting to look better as well, bullpen wise at least, because you're getting more consistency. But the one gripe that I still have after this series as well, outside of the runners at scoring position thing, you're not getting volume from these starters at all. And man, it's annoying. Like outside David Peterson, which credit to him, he worked into a lot of jams, but worked out of them. It sucks because he probably could have got 7 if he didn't get into a few jams here and there. But it's like Clay Holmes, once again, 5 innings from him. Kodai Senga, 5 brutal innings from him where he's walking 5 batters. The 9-hitter I felt like was getting put on base way too many times by him. But either way, that's where I'm willing to be patient for the deadline, see what starter they acquire, because they need a guy that could eat innings, because it is so frustrating watching all these guys go out there outside David Peterson, and it's 5 innings the maximum for these guys, and maybe you could get them to get a few outs in the 6. Like, that's what's really annoying.
Yeah, I didn't think Peterson had and I'm gonna touch upon all the stars, but for Peterson's start, I didn't think he was great specifically, but it's just with Peterson, he just and I know we call him results man, but it's just like he gets the results. It's like every single time he gets into trouble, he makes the pitch to get out of every jam and to get out of every inning. And honestly, it's very impressive. And I mean, again, the guy goes out there, he gives you length, and he just gives you results. It's like it's impressive. And listen, I get that Peterson is not the most pleasing to watch on the eye because obviously, when you see a starting pitcher, you want to see the swings and misses, you want to see the high velo, you just want to see these guys mow through the opposing order. But it's just listen, Peterson has his own way to get through to get through opposing lineups, and it works for him. It works for him. So I mean, I can't really clown him too much because he ends up getting these results, and it's just he's results man. It's like there's no other way to put it. And then to touch upon Clay Holmes, I thought Holmes was okay. It's just the one thing I've noticed about Clay Holmes, and I've talked about this many times, from comparing him at the start of the year up until now. Because again, it's not the walks that are getting Clay Holmes in trouble because he only walked one batter in that first game. It's the fact that the swing and miss stuff right now is just not there. And like I said, when you compare him from start of the season where he was getting a ton of swings and misses, he was, using a ton of his pitches, he was getting through these opposing lineups relatively quickly. But it's like there's multiple times where you see Clay Holmes where he gets to 2 strike counts. He'll get on opposing batters, really quickly in either a 1 or 2 count or an 0-2 count. And then he just can't execute that put away pitch, and then you see he gets into a ton of these battles, and then he ends up maybe walking a guy here and there, or he gives up a little like a little bunt hit down the line, which it's like you can't really do anything about it. It's just that's the thing. That's the thing that sucks about Clay Holmes. It's like he's giving you solid outings. It's just in terms of when you look at the hits and when you look at the runs given up, it's just he's not giving you that one extra inning that you would ideally like. Because if Clay Holmes would start to go 6 more consistently, I don't think anyone would talk bad about Clay Holmes. Because I mean, look, we're sitting here on July 28th, and the guy has like a 3.28 ERA now. Like, if you told me that before the season that at this point Holmes would have that ERA, it's like, okay, like I will gladly take that from Clay Holmes. It's just he needs just push that one more inning, and then like I'll be totally cool with Clay Holmes. And then when you move on to Senga didn't have a great outing. He didn't. I mean, sure, he only gives up the 3 runs. I have more of a problem with the first home run given up to Matt Chapman than the second home run, because the first home run that he gave up, it was just a hanging cutter over the middle of the plate. That was a poorly executed pitch. The second home run, I really can't get too too mad about saying. I really can't get too mad because it was a good piece of hit by Matt Chapman. You know, Senga just tried to get a fastball um inside him, and Chapman was just able to turn on, and he drove the home run out to center field. So I can't really get too mad about saying on that. It's just against the walks. Like 5 walks is it's too much. It is too much. He and I think the thing about Sanga, and they talked about it on the broadcast as well. It's like because we've heard all the rumors, you know, that Sanga's a perfectionist. He likes to be absolutely pin perfect with his mechanics. I think the thing with Sanga is sometimes he gets a little too much in his head, and it's like, bro, like you have good stuff. Just go out there and throw strikes. You know, I think when he tries to tinkle a little too much, you know, with the forkball, with trying to, you know, execute every pitch perfectly, that's when we start to see the trouble of him starting, you know, to have a lot of walks and load up the base and to get in and to, you know, get into trouble. I think if Senga could just, you know, work on that and get past that mental block, kind of like I think he'll be fine. And again, I'm not too worried about Senga, but again, it does show you that this team needs to go out there and get another starting pitcher. And at least it was good from last night that Buster only mentioned that the Mets right now are currently looking for you know, a 1, 2, 3 starter, a guy that's going to eat innings, you know, if they get to the postseason. So at least that's good to see. But you know, rumors are nice, but now they need to actually go and execute a trade for that type of starting pitcher.
Yeah, it just like that's the thing I said in the post game with Clay Holmes. You could live with what he's giving you if you had more guys in the rotation that were able to eat innings. The problem is you don't right now because I don't know if Mania or when Mania will get up to that point where he could give you the innings he was giving you last year. I don't know if Montas is going to be able to give you some of those kind of innings. So you definitely need to see someone else come in here and step up. And, you know, there is potentially an audition going on tonight with Dylan Cease. And I guess we could segue kind of into that trade deadline talk because I see everyone talking about Robert and Vientos, which we'll get to that in a bit here. But you know, I would really I hope that Dylan Cease, I hope the Mets win tonight, but I hope he goes out there and balls out just to showcase for the Mets. Like, you got to go get this guy. And I'm hoping that they go out and get him. I know that people are going to look at the baseline ERA, look at his 3-10 record and say, oh, this guy's no good. Under the hood, there is so much to like about Dylan Cease. Like, the underlying numbers do not do justice to how good he is. Plus, what have we talked about all the time with this you know, the pitching lab and everything here? Talk about how they get the best out of guys. And if you could get the best out of Dylan Cease, I mean, the best of Dylan Cease, you go back to that 2022 season where he finished second in Cy Young voting, a 2.20 ERA on that year, made all 32 starts, had a 1.10 whip, 3.10 FIP. Like, if you could get that out of Dylan Cease down the stretch, you acquire him and get that, which you should trust with this pitching lab. I mean, to me, that's a no brainer because then that's your guy that's going to go out there and give you 6 to 7 innings on a nightly basis. And I'm not concerned about the ERA either because I just looked at his game log just because I was curious. You know, are there any games that really inflated that ERA? And there are 3 games where he allowed north of 6 runs. One of them, he allowed 9 runs, which obviously is not good. But outside of that, I mean, he's consistently going out there, not giving up a run, allowing 1 run, 2 runs, and at most, like consistently allowing 3 runs in his outings. You add that to the fact that he has the swing and miss stuff that this rotation needs, where you need to get a guy that could start striking guys out. I mean, he's at 11.4 strikeouts per 9 on the year. You add that into this rotation, and then hope he can limit the walks a little bit as well. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer of what you do there. The other names are Gallon, which I wouldn't mind, who's kind of profiled in the similar way, where it's like you look at the baseline numbers, it's not great. You're banking on what he's been in the past and the under the hood stuff being good, which I'm okay with that too. Like, that's the thing that's honestly great about this pitching lab, where it's like, I don't care if they bring in Gallon, I don't care if they bring in Cease, I don't care if they bring in Alcantara, Cabrera. I trust this pitching lab to get the most out of these guys. And if you get the most out of a Dylan Cease or Zach Gallen, I mean, those are legitimate aces for your rotation then.
Yeah, listen, if they could swing off a trade and get Dylan Cease, I think that would be ideally because I think probably, at least for me, by name wise, he's probably the best starting pitcher out there on the market right now. And look, I get it; the numbers aren't exactly the prettiest, but this is a guy, Dylan Cease, who has a very good track record. When he's pitching at his top abilities, you're getting basically an okay, maybe he's not one of the top aces in baseball, but he's certainly one of those mid to lower end, very good aces out there on the market. And listen, like I said, he's got a good track record. He's pitched well. When he was at the White Sox, he pitched pretty well. For the couple years that he's been with the Padres. Like I said, it's a guy who gets strikeouts. He pitches innings. Like the only thing you said, if he could come in this pitching lab and you could figure out the walks a little bit, maybe somehow get the velo just a tick or two up there. I think Cease would be a very good trade target. The only thing I worry about is, and again, this is not a worry with him specifically. It's what kind of trade package are the Padres looking for? Because the Padres are a weird team right now. If you're going to make a trade with them, because they're not necessarily one of those selling teams, because they're still in the hunt for a playoff spot. They're still looking to win games to be competitive. So it's not like the Mets are just going to send them a load of prospects for Dylan Cease. They probably want major league caliber talent that's going to help this team now. I don't know what that trade exactly looks like. Are they interested in Mark Vientos? Maybe. Do they look at Ronnie Mauricio's game last night, see 4 for 4, and say, "Hey, I would like a piece of that"? Or probably, do they also look up? Do they also look for a replacement starting pitcher, and they say, can we maybe get McLean or Sproat out of this trade package? So listen, I would love to get Dylan Cease here. It's just I don't exactly know what the Mets could exactly offer in a trade that's major league ready level talent that the Padres would want.
Yeah, that's the only problem where it's like you probably have to include like even if you include Vientos, like is that even what they would want? Because it's like, where's he playing for that team?
Yeah, I mean he's not
Because
playing. He's not playing third because Machado's there.
shortstop Bogarts is taking it up. I mean, are like do they view him as a DH and then they get rid of Arias? Because that's a possibility. Like that's really all I could think of in that regard. And then if you're looking at pitchers, if they're looking for major league guys, I mean, not a lot out there on the Mets team right now to help them out unless they look big picture wise and want to, like I said, with the Budo thing before, maybe they look at that like they did with Michael King and they want to stretch him back to a starter and make that work. And then other than that, I mean, you're looking at prospects in that deal. Like that's really about it to where I don't know if it's plausible to get Dylan Cease. That's why I think they're more likely to land Cabrera or Sandy than Gallen, than Cease, or any of these other guys because at least with Edward Cabrera and Sandy Alcantara, the Marlins are going to want guys that are like far away from major league ready to where I don't care about giving those guys up because they're not impacting this year's team. They're not impacting next year's team. They might not even impact the 2027 team. So I don't care if they give those guys up to where the Diamondbacks are going to want to bounce back relatively quickly. Like they're probably going to want to contend again next season. The Padres are looking to contend right now still. At least with the Marlins, you could sell them a package of a good mix of both. Like if maybe they want Vientos and you put him in that deal, and you could go out there and give up some prospects with Vientos, and that's your deal to get Edward Cabrera or Sandy Alcantara. And I would prefer Sandy for obvious reasons there, even though Edward Cabrera has the better baseline stuff, right? Or baseline numbers right now. But it sucks because I would freaking love to see Cease on this team.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned with Cease, he's probably the best option right now in terms of name wise for starting pitcher. But again, I don't know if they're going to be able to make it work in terms of what they probably want as a package in return. But I mean, look, I mean, right now, when I get it, rumors are just rumors, but there is some other intriguing names that that the Mets are probably linked to right now. And I mean, look, they've already got Gregory Soto. That's one bullpen arm. I still think for me, I want another bullpen arm, more of a reliable shutdown right-handed guy. Obviously, like we talked about, Halsey's been talked about. Duran was talked about. Classe, like you mentioned, he was talked about, but he's not getting traded now. And I mean, both right now, the Cardinals and the Twins are smiling severely right now because the prices just went up for Helsley and Durant just because you already have a big name in Classe off the market. So probably if the Mets were going to make a trade for one of those two, they're probably gonna have to give up a little bit more now, just because again, like I said, that's one big name off the market. But they've been connected to other bats. I mean, still the Robert rumors are out there. Obviously, there was the Mullins rumor. I think probably as of right now, and like I've said this before, I still think they land Luis Robert. I think there's too much smoke around there to not land Robert. But like what me and you both discussed, we're not huge on Robert, but if they bring in another bat along with Robert, I would definitely feel a lot better about that. And one of the names right now they're connected to, and it's your guy, Brandon Lau. I think if they
Hell
could
yeah.
land, I think if they could land Brandon Lau, because even we were talking about it last time on the post game show. If you want to do, because I mean we talked about it with Robert being a very good hitter against lefties, and if you maybe want to if you get rid of Tyrone Taylor and then you end up doing a platoon in center field with McNeil and Robert, depending on the opposing pitcher out there and what handed they are. Then you could slide in Brandon Lau to be that big time middle of the lineup power bat second base. You could move Brett Beatty over to third base. Who's more of a reliable glove right now than Ronnie Mauricio. So there is definitely there is definitely some options right there that are available. But like I said, for me, I think I would be very happy with this deadline if one they got Soto, but if they could go out and get a guy like Helsley, get Robert, get Lau, and then get another starting pitcher, I think adding in those five guys, I think that's a statement of intent to say, okay, we're going for this. And like I said, rumors are rumors, but if they could find a way to land those guys, I'd be very happy with this deadline.
I wonder if the Lau thing is like they get Lau and Fairbanks in that deal, which that I would also absolutely freaking take and run with it, even though obviously I worry about sending anyone to the Rays, as we see with Eric Orzy just going off there right now. But maybe that's the Mark Vientos destination because the Rays are in a playoff spot right now, and they might move Yandy Diaz as well. So maybe they're the team interested in Mark Vientos, and you move him to help you get Fairbanks and Brandon Lau. Maybe you get Yandy Diaz in the deal as well, or you get him instead of Lau, which I would love Yandy Diaz just as much as I would love Brandon Lau. So we'll see. I mean, I'm just happy to hear them connected to these names because it seemed like a week ago, it felt like they were going to do nothing. And obviously, rumors are rumors, like you said. So we have to see them actually go out and do it. But I'm a little more encouraged that they're going to be aggressive compared to where I felt a week ago. And I think the win streak definitely helps with that because you go out and win 7 straight games. You are sending your front office a message like, yeah, go all in for us right now. And I hope that's the message that Stearns feels that he's getting, and I hope that it translates to the transactions he makes because if they go into this deadline, and I said for weeks now, I want 2 relievers, 2 bats, and a starting pitcher. You already got one of the relievers. If by Thursday, this team could acquire one more reliever, like if they could land Fairbanks and Lau package, Luis Robert, and one of those Miami starters, maybe that's a win at the deadline for me. That's I will not complain if they do more, but that to me would be like the perfect scenario at this rate.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't really too worried when Stearns had those initial, what's it called when he did those initial press conferences about saying, oh, we're probably only gonna look for a center fielder, we'll probably only mainly look for bullpen guys. I wasn't too concerned just because again we've seen kind of Stearns not really, you know, Stearns is the type of guy that's not really going to, give away too much information. He likes to play with his, cards close to his chest. So that's the thing, like I said, and this goes for both negative rumors and positive rumors. That's why I'm not really getting, very much excited about, these rumors that they're now connected to all these guys, and then that go down when they were saying that probably they're not going to do much at the deadline. I'm pretty much a wait and see guy. Let's wait and see what happens. Obviously, we'll obviously give criticism if criticism is due, or we'll be positive and we'll give Stearns credit where it's due if he ends up making all these trades. So listen, we'll see. We're a couple days away. Obviously, the closer we get, maybe the more teams win, or maybe the more teams lose as we get to these couple days. Maybe more guys are going to start to get available. Maybe the market opens up to where it's more of a buyer's market than it is a seller's market, because that's the thing. It's like, if there's not a lot of options out there on the trade market, then it's like, and the prices are just like astronomically like expensive and high. It's like, it's tough to do business because now you're fighting with all these teams that probably have better prospect resources than the Mets currently have. So the fact that it looks like that more teams are finally starting to make decisions about where they currently stand, and it looks like more teams are going to be willing to sell, I think that plays much more into the Mets' favor.
Yeah, 100%. We also saw, like I mentioned last time, that rumor that they're kind of waiting to see who else might become available. But I did want to address like some more of the Vienta stuff while we're on the deadline subject, because a lot of it is like you don't want to give up Vientos because we saw what happened last year in the playoffs with them. And then I saw people commenting about, would we move him for Robert, which has been a hot topic because it seems like that's something that could be feasible, and that's something it seems like the White Sox would be interested in. It makes sense. My stance on the Vientos thing is this. I love Mark Vientos. I was, you know, a Vientos truther for quite a bit now. Um, I appreciate what he did last year in the playoffs, but to me, it's time to move on, unfortunately, because are you trying to win this year, or are you trying to say, you know what, let's keep Vientos around and see what if he could bounce back next year? Because to me, the goal is simple. You're trying to win a championship this year. And if trading Mark Vientos helps you achieve that, then you have to do it. And I'm not the biggest Luis Robert guy. I think I've made that abundantly clear. But I could also sit here and say, if you trade Vientos for Robert, at least Robert, when all things are going wrong for both these players, which is the case right now for them, when all is going wrong, at the very least, Luis Robert is a good glove in the outfield. At least he steals some bags as well. Where Mark Vientos, he is so unathletic, he is so horrible defensively, to where there is no value when this guy is not hitting. There's none at all. And also, I want to remind everyone how 90% of Met fans wanted this guy tossed to the side of the street before last season. Before even, like, it took until June or July for fans to not want this guy tossed to the side of the street. And honestly, I didn't mind moving him last offseason because, okay, there are things that might be unsustainable with what we saw from him last year, unfortunately. But I was willing to ride it out and see, because it's a third baseman with control. You want to see if he could replicate it, which was understandable. But right now, the goal is to win, not to see if Mark Vientos bounces back. You have a plethora of infielders to where, are you going to move the wrong guy? Maybe. Maybe you do move the wrong guy out of the group. But at the same time, Brett Beatty has been more consistent at the plate, and he's playing a better third base. Ronnie Mauricio, I think the ceiling's higher with him, and I think that he provides more value in the field as well. And I mean, the only other guy out of the group I would move is Acuna. I mean, I'd move Acuna for sure over Vientos, but I don't know if I don't think anyone's lining up to get Acuna right now. So to me, it's just like, I don't love the idea of Robert by itself. Like I said, I could live with it if they make another move. But I could also sit here and say I understand the thought process of if they move Vientos for Robert.
Listen, I think with this specifically, I think you have to look at everything in perspective, and you have to look at everything in context, right? Listen, if the Mets do make this trade where Vientos ends up going to the White Sox and then Robert ends up coming to the Mets, listen, 4, 3, 5 years down the line, it could look like a disaster trade. If Mark Vientos goes to Chicago and he puts everything together and he becomes, a consistent silver slugger, a guy that's hitting 30 home runs consistently a year, and then Robert comes here and it's like, okay, he provides you good defense, he provides you some good speed on the backs, but his hitting doesn't take off, and the Mets end up getting rid of him in like 1 or 2 years. Yeah, listen, at that point, the trade might very well look like a disaster, but it's a risk I'm willing to take right now, just because, as you said, when you look at both guys as of currently right now, the fact that both guys aren't hitting well, and I know, Robert's had a decent July, but when you look at the numbers for the season as a whole, right, both of them haven't hit. But like you said, when you look at each guy's abilities and skill sets, okay, when both of them are hitting, Robert is much more of a valuable player because, one, he actually plays a position. He plays the position well. He plays a good center field. Cody could attest to that he plays a very good center field. And he also provides speed on the base pass, which, again, and I've said this before, but Mark Vientos is the most unathletic, skinny guy I've ever seen. That guy is so skinny, but he is the slowest motherfucker I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he makes Vogelback look fast and Bartolo Colon look fast, which is that's something impressive. And then again, when you compare, Vientos to guys like Mauricio and Beatty, okay, even when those guys aren't hitting, they still provide more value because, one, Beatty and Mauricio are both better defenders. They can actually play third base well. And then, okay, Beatty's not the fastest guy, but then again, you look with Mauricio. Mauricio is a guy, especially as has his ACL recovered, he's going to be the guy that steals multiple bases a year. That's actually quick on the base pass. If you could stretch out a hit for a double or a hit for a triple. So listen, like I said, down the line, could it very well look like a bad trade? Yeah, I mean, even though the White Sox, don't use analytics, like they don't believe in computers, so I don't know. Maybe Vientos doesn't unlock it, even though for some reason, Adrian Hauser's having a freaking renaissance here in Chicago, which I don't exactly know how that's happening, but okay, cool. It's just, but like I said, sure, down the line, could it look like a bad trade? Yes, but as of right now, I think Robert is a better upgrade and a better player and more valuable to this roster than what Mark Vientos offers currently.
And then I also just agree with this, where it's like, if he goes to the White Sox, is Mark Vientos really going to hurt you by going to the White Sox?
No.
So, like, that's the thing. Like, the Rays, if he went to the Rays, if he went to, like, a good team, I would understand being a little more fearful of it. But at the same time, this team needs a guy that could hit against lefties, too. And at the very least, Luis Robert could do that. Mark Vientos is at best league average right now against right-handed pitchers. And that's at best. He's, I'm sorry, a couple of clutch hits from Vientos here and there, it's not going to cut it. It's just not at all. They need a guy that's going to help them more consistently and way more athletic than that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've warmed up to the idea in that regard where, again, I don't mind getting Robert as long as they're acquiring another bat. Like, that's all my ask is. If you're getting Robert and Lau, to me, that is the perfect combination of moves to come the deadline, because Brandon Lau is incredible against right-handed pitching. Robert's great against left-handed pitching. There is your little platoon there, and then you shift guys around, whether it's McNeil playing center, and then Lau plays second base, or you have McNeil play second base, and then you put Robert out there in center, or maybe one of the guys DHs, depending on where Marte's at. Maybe, Brandon Lau's your left-handed DH when Marte gets his days off. Maybe that's how you do it. I don't know, but to me, that's the perfect scenario. You have a guy that can match righties, you have a guy that can match lefties, and you add that to this lineup. Perfect to me.
No, yeah, pretty much. I agree with everything you're saying right now.
Is it fair to say Vientos in last season of the playoffs was just a freak? I mean, yeah, you could say that, but he just had a good year last year, and he rode it into the playoffs. And the problem really that I have with Vientos right now is, forget about just bouncing back and baseball abilities itself. It just seems like mentally, it's not there for him right now. It really feels that way, and it feels like last year he kind of got too complacent from what happened to where this is where we're at, unfortunately. And it sucks because I was really hoping that they finally found their third baseman. And even though he's not good in the field, at least the guy could freaking mash. So I was like, at least you finally got one of these young third basemen to give you production. And this offense misses what they got from him last year. Unfortunately, though, it's just not the case. It's
Yeah, I
not the
mean,
case at
if
all.
I mean, listen, if they had the Vientos of last year in this roster, I don't think we'd be screaming too much for them to get what's it called, another big bat because at that point, if you had the Vientos that you had now this year, you know, and again, this is still factoring that he's playing the poor defense that he is this year, then you would feel much more comfortable moving Vientos to be your full time DH, and then having one of Beatty or Mauricio as your strong third baseman, or maybe you even trade for a more reliable veteran type of third baseman or backup infielder, but the fact of the matter is that Vientos just hasn't had a good year. And, another point that you brought up, which I agree with, is his body language has been very poor this year. And I mean, you could you could tell that right from the start of the season. I mean, when he had those, and this was I believe the second series of the season, in Miami, when he was having one of those poor defensive games, you could just that he was putting his arms up in the air. He was just like his mind was like totally out of it. And then you've seen multiple times where because it seems like Vientos for this year, it seems like wherever he's batting the order, he's constantly coming up in the biggest spots of games with when it's like bases loaded, it's guys in second and third, and you've seen a ton of times where he strikes out and he's smashing the bat, he's breaking the bat, and it's just like he's just mentally he's not had a good year, physically he's not had a good year, and it's just and again, it's shown up in the numbers. The batting average is down, the power numbers are down, the on base percentage is down. It's just like again, listen, ideally in a perfect world, would I want to trade Vientos? No, because I still think maybe there is that type of player in there. But again, when you look at and see that this team is in a position right now to contend and compete for a World Series, you have to make that move because as of right now, Vientos is just not providing any value to this team.
Yeah. And no, the White Sox wouldn't do it straight up. You'd have to include other prospects as well. But or maybe it is one for one. I don't know. But all I know is that it's something that I wouldn't hate. I wouldn't hate it because at the very least with Robert, you're getting some of those things. Like I said, I still have my concerns though with Robert, where it's like, you know, is he going to be more consistent than he was? And the work ethic issues really scare me because if you can't just go to the ballpark and mash on the White Sox, like you should be trying to play your way out of that organization. I don't know, but do you have anything else to add before we get into the pitching matchup for the series coming up and then wrap up the episode?
No, I think we could preview this upcoming series.
So with that being said, not a lot to preview though because the Padres just are not announcing their rotation, which is very bizarre. Maybe because of trades. I don't know. All I know is that game one, Dylan Cease is on the mound, like we talked about before, who's 3-10 on the year, a 4.59 ERA and a 1.30 WHIP, versus Frankie Montas, who is 3-1 on the year, a 4.62 ERA, a 1.30 WHIP as well. In game number two, like I said, the Padres have not announced anyone. Sean Manaea is 1-1 on the year, a 2.19 ERA, a .97 WHIP. And then for game three, Clay Holmes will go for the Mets, 9-5 on the year, 3.40 ERA and a 1.28 WHIP. You got to win the series at the bare minimum. I'll say they win tonight's game, keep the winning streak going. I'll say that they win tomorrow's game, and then they drop that third game right before the trade deadline. That's what my prediction will be.
Yeah. I think they win the series. They take 2 out of 3. And again, I think that'd be fantastic if they're able to take the series. Because again, I mean, we both asked for a 4-2 road trip. If you could walk out of San Diego going into the trade deadline with a 5-1, with a 5-1 road trip, I think that'd be fantastic. I'll say they win the first game. I think they lose the second game, and I think they win the third game. And they head into the trade deadline on a little bit of a high. But I mean, yeah, I mean, we'll see. Listen, the Padres are still a tough team. Obviously, we'll see what how Dylan Cease pitches. Might and very well be his last game ever played or pitched at Petco Park in a Padres uniform. And then, I mean, obviously, of course, some of the other guys you got to worry about. Tatis, he's had a very good year statistically. Machado, he's had a good year statistically. Obviously, Jackson Merrill, you got to worry about. But yeah, I mean, listen, it's going to be a tight, close series, but hopefully the Mets can come out on top, take 2 out of 3, and head into the trade deadline a little bit of a high, and then it's the final stretch until the postseason. So yeah, it should be a fun little. Well, I mean, last 2 months. I mean, the fact that we're already almost at August 1st is crazy right now because it feels
Insane.
like the season started like a couple weeks ago. It's crazy how we're already here.
No, yeah, I keep like having to just reflect on that all the time because it's like it feels like just the other day we were at City Field, hearing that Jose Siri can't play center field because of he didn't make a catch. Um, but yeah, it's just insane that we're already here. Insane how quick this season has gone. Which there's this part of me that is happy about it because I cannot wait for October baseball, but there's also this part of me that is like, damn, I'm trying to like, enjoy the summer, enjoy what we're getting this baseball season, but we're already like getting into the crunch time here of the season, which is insane. And then, you know, don't I'm dreading the fall for other reasons. But either way, we're gonna wrap things up here before we go off the rails about that. Thank you everyone for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.